everybody, and welcome back to Ask the Unfaithful. I'm joined by my co-host and brilliant mind to all that is recovery focused, James Anir. So, James, you have been with your beautiful and brilliant wife, Sharon, launching Ask the Betrayed. So, before we jump into today's content, why don't you give a little bit of an update on Ask the Betrayed and where they can find it and all that fun stuff?
Absolutely. So Ask Betrayed is now almost several episodes in, and they can be found at that little @ sign, Ask the Betrayed on YouTube. They're also on all of the other audio platforms for podcasts. So you can find them there, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so on. And that's going really well. It's Ray and Sharon. Ray is one of our coaches, but she's also a coach of her own accord, and they are incredible. They're really dynamic together. I think this is going to continue to be very popular, and the feedback that we got at Lit Path conference was very, very good. And that's from professionals and people who are just listening to it because they're going through this and they're finding that with Ask the Unfaithful, there's this wonderful balance.
So, for those of you that want to find it, you can search for Ask the Betrayed on YouTube or Apple or Spotify. You can find it very easily. It's available there. Today, on Ask the Unfaithful, we're talking about 4 ways that shame and avoidance sabotage healing. The fact is, James, if you've worked with one unfaithful, that one would probably speak for millions who ultimately typically struggle with shame and avoidance, or else they almost wouldn't have found themselves in the situation that they found themselves in, due to the fact that shame and avoidance is an epidemic when you're dealing with both the mind and the heart of the unfaithful partner. Am I right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can't. Even though some folks out there don't necessarily recognize their shame, and that's okay because what's relevant is that it's how it shows up, and it generally does show up in the avoidance. And avoidance comes up in a number of different ways that we'll get into. But really, what we're looking at today is how do you build that shame resilience piece so that your connection with your partner that you're trying to rebuild can actually happen. Really, what we're avoiding is painful emotions and so on. It's very difficult to talk about those. So, if we can get ourselves to a place where we can, I think it follows pretty easily that our relationship with our betrayed is going to improve. There are ways we have
Well,
to do that, though.
you're exactly right. And why we're talking about this is because, in many ways, I'm sure you've sat in many sessions or intensives and had to have this point where you've had to tell an unfaithful, hey, you're getting in your own way. And so today we're trying to tell all of you unfaithful that dare listen, and to many of you betrayed that are also listening, this is how the unfaithful gets in your own way. So as we launch out, why don't you share a little bit about how the unfaithful gets in their own way so many times?
It precedes the discovery, but there's this feeling that's really present right after discovery and in the early stages of recovery. And that's where probably most of us don't think we deserve to have feelings really about anything anymore. And that's really not true. What that is actually part of the damage is that we don't feel that we can feel about anything because the damage is not just to the relationship, but to ourselves. Because when shame, which is, I don't deserve to feel this way, I don't deserve to have connection, when shame hijacks our nervous system, which is exactly what it does, our emotional needs, which is about connection, feel dangerous, like a threat. So what we do is we then avoid to keep ourselves safe. And one of the ways we do that is we go silent. Another way we do it, which is not really thought of very much, is we bulldoze. We push everything out of the way. Nope, nope, it's this, right? And so most people would think, well, how's that avoiding? Well, it's really pushing everything aside and everybody aside. So we don't have to feel or express our feelings, or we lie. So essentially, we emotionally disappear. The reason we do that is because avoidance protects us from exposure for all the things that we're scared of. that people might see about us, but also it has this problematic side to it. It prevents us from being intimate or connected. It keeps us stuck, alone, emotionally distant. Here's another really, really important point. This is not something new to us. Most of us were emotionally avoidant before the betrayal, before it even started. Now, I'm not just talking about discovery. I'm talking before it started, we were emotionally avoidant. And infidelity was the next evolution of that disconnection. Increased avoidance equals increased disconnection, and therefore even more decreased trust. So here's the thing. We still have emotions. And whether we believe it or not, they need to be talked about. Whether we believe we deserve it or not, they need to be talked about. Because when they get stuffed under shame, they fester, they rot, and then they leak out as hiding, lying, manipulation, moodiness, martyrdom, which is another word for victimhood, and capital letters here, R.E.A.L, APSE, relapse, because that's the ultimate end piece of this. So, what about expressing it? When I was first thinking about this, it was more like, how do you express your emotions to your partner right after discovery? Well, you don't, right? Not immediately. There's an
Right.
appropriate time. We're going to get to that. And yes, we have to be able to express them, which is why we can't do what we've always done, which is isolate. Having another human being to express these to is vital. So we have to learn how to communicate those emotions, which we're really not very good at because we've never really done it. But the other part of that is we've got to learn how to communicate them without that shame getting in the way. And thus, if that shame's not getting in the way, then we won't be manipulating, we won't be dumping. And we'll talk about that a bit too. This learning how to communicate properly is part of how we become safe again with our partner. So, first, we're becoming safe with ourselves. Ultimately, this is about emotional sobriety, emotional intelligence, if you will. Not neediness, not narcissism, not self centeredness. It's about becoming someone who can be real and relational, relational. Because the trauma of betrayal will not end until you can. Meaning, if we can't communicate, it's going to keep that cycle going.
Well, and this is really a vital piece to the puzzle because the unfaithful is responsible for building their own shame resilience. It's not the betrayed's job to help the unfaithful build shame resilience. That's part of the work of the unfaithful because if we can develop shame resilience, then we can overcome our desire or our bent to avoid talking and being vulnerable, right?
Yeah. And that's what we're talking about, right? If we don't develop the shame resilience, how could we possibly overcome that? You can't rebuild trust until you learn emotional honesty, and that's with yourself and others, because shame grows in silence and it dies in safe connection, which is where you learn how to recognize what your emotional reality is. Before we get into that safe connection piece, let's just talk about the basics of building shame resilience. And I'm going to do it pretty briefly. We can do another podcast on this specifically and expand it. But let's talk about some pieces here. And there are 5 pieces to this. Stop seeking validation is number 1. Stop managing how other people perceive you. We talk about it as image management, but I wanted to say that in another way so that it could land better, and stop people pleasing. So this is number 1, stop seeking validation. So stop managing how other people perceive you and stop people pleasing. Number 2, recognize your triggers. So that sounds really easy, right? I'm not talking about the people, places, and things that we talk about as basic triggers for sexual acting out or emotional acting out. Of course, we have to know those. What I'm talking about is the emotional, the inner triggers, things that will throw us off track. Things like I feel small, I feel invisible, or I feel exposed when dot, 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 right? Another way to do this, if I'm ever feeling victimy or I have victimy thoughts or I really want to blame, that person shouldn't have done that, or they did this, and so on. Really, I want people to be able to do like I do in this that has really helped me, and that's recognize that those are a cue. If we cannot vilify ourselves for having those thoughts and see them as a cue for something's really off with me right now, something's going wrong emotionally, something where I'm not balanced, then we can do something about it because they're actually really easily recognizable. We know when we're kind of in that sad sack mode, right?
Right.
So we need to be able to recognize those. Next one, number 3, name your shame. This is to yourself, not to your partner. You also want to name it to somebody else, but I'm going to get to that point. We name our shame so we don't get stuck in that old story of blah, 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 blah. So you name it. I feel ashamed. I want to disappear right now. This sucks. You name it, and then you reality check it. And this is number 4. And the key question here is this about my worth or my wound? So, what I mean by that is some outside source actually taking me down into a place that isn't true? Or is it about my wound where it's reactivating some of that old stuff that keeps me in the same place? So that reality check is really important because we can discern what we need to in order to grow there. Then, number 5, reach out. This is sharing with somebody safe. Again, not your partner. I'm not saying that your partner wouldn't be safe. Right now, early recovery, assuming that's where you are, is not the place to do this. There's a time when that
Right.
will be, and we'll talk about that a little more as we move along.
And I think the goal is to be able to share with your partner down the road, but it's never going to replace the fact that you have to have safe people around you of the same sex who you can talk to and be vulnerable with. Not even just early on, but those that are just a little while into recovery, probably not going to be your partner. That's why you need someone who you can work with, therapist, coach, sponsor, best friend, safe best friend who isn't going to give you advice on something they've never been through before. But all of this is about sharing your emotions in a healthy way. Obviously, we got to highlight the word healthy way because we're in post infidelity relationships and we certainly know the unhealthy way. So, how do we do it in a healthy way? And how do we process our shame in a way that is redemptive?
I think there are a couple of core thoughts that go with this. And one of them that I've highlighted here is if you don't process your shame, it will get processed through the people you love and they will bleed for it.
Mm,
It's really important, that last piece, they will bleed for it. That gives us motivation to go, I don't want that.
yeah.
Another core message that we need to understand so that we're not increasing shame here is your emotions are valid. And right now, your partner can't regulate them. You can't co regulate, she or he can't regulate them for you. And you can't do it on your own yet because you've got to learn this stuff. So you have to have other people to help you. I'm going to put out a big fat don't here. Don't dump emotionally charged needs or issues onto your betrayed partner early in recovery. I know I'm saying this over and over again, but there's a really important reason for that. It is like handing a concrete block to someone who's drowning. And there's a reason for this because your partner is already overwhelmed with their own flood of emotions most of the time immediately post discovery. That can be for quite some time after. Likely is that they've regulated your emotions for years and they can't do that anymore. They've run out of fuel. It's unfair to them. And that's part of why we're talking about this now, so that you can take that away from them so they don't have to feel like that's part of what they've got to do. It's really hard to regulate somebody else's emotions who's betrayed you.
Right.
So Because you can't do this alone, we're going to talk about where can those emotional needs or emotionally charged issues go right now. You mentioned a few. If you're in an S program, like a 12-step program or a betrayal specific program, sponsor, mentor. A trauma informed, and by that I mean betrayal trauma informed, because it's different from just trauma informed. Betrayal trauma is very, very specific. So, betrayal trauma informed therapist or coach, sex and intimacy recovery group, like therapy groups, coaching groups, an accountability partner, and or a trained pastoral advisor. Now, pastoral kind of is specific to Christian. So whatever your religion is, whomever that is, but they need to be trained in betrayal trauma. And if they don't have that training, APSATS offers that training. ITAP offers that training. So why do this? How are they going to help you? This is really important because this is what you can't do for yourself right now. They're going to
Right.
help unpack those underlying issues. Whatever you're going to try to say to your partner, if any of this, they'll help you determine whether you should or should not. They're going to help you check your tone, your motive, your emotional sobriety. Are you in a reactive place or a responsive type of place? They're going to help you clarify what issues need to be communicated versus what might be disguised demands or asks to make you feel okay or regulate your emotions. And then when sharing with your partner is appropriate or necessary, again, ensuring that you're regulated before you engage. There are a lot of reasons why this actually helps your relationship too. First one is it's going to protect your betrayed partner from further emotional burden. They've got more than they can carry right now. It also builds emotional literacy and self regulation, emotional regulation in the unfaithful, which we need. Okay, you and I have quite a bit of emotional literacy. I'm not saying we're perfect, but how did we get there? We didn't have
Right.
it at the beginning. I mean, like zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are even some listeners who are further ahead than we were back then. But this is how we do it, getting this feedback from people in the know who can support us and help show us the way. It also increases the unfaithful's empathy, which we're always wanting to do. Our betrayed partners are always wanting us to do that. And it keeps conversations with the betrayed, when we have them, centered on relational safety, not on the emotional caretaking.
Because we're talking today about how to handle emotions, how to really manage our own shame so that we can share our emotions with our partner out of a regulated state, out of a state of health, out of a state of calm, so that we're not transferring onto our partner all of our own stuff, all of our own drama, because so many times objectivity is lost. When the unfaithful learns how to self regulate, it makes them better at co regulating. Because if they can't self regulate, it's going to be very hard for them to ultimately move into a co regulation state. So, you talk about the R.E.A.L method when it comes to regulating yourself. What does that look like?
The real method, believe it or not, I was looking around for a way to put this into something that was easily understandable and easily memorable. And I came across some of these pieces. It wasn't called the real method in what I found, but I came across some of the pieces in some corporate literature of all things. And I was like, oh man, this is really adaptable and really helps. So the first part, the R, so real would be R period EAL, right? It's an acronym. So R is regulate yourself first. Regulate yourself first. Do your emotional reps before you open your mouth, before you start speaking, especially if you're flooded. So that might mean, I think I'm going to press pause and I'm going to go do some breathing or some walking to get myself in a less emotive place so that I'm able to speak in a much better way. And it's going to land well. And I'm going to also be able to make the point that needs to be made. Part of those emotional reps is going to be managing your emotions, taking a moment to calm down before you engage. Here's one of the keys. If you can feel that your body is relaxed or calm, your amygdala, or your survival part of your brain, that part that gets you fired up, fight, flight, freeze, etc. If your body is relaxed, it cannot be fired up. So if you can feel that your body is, I'm calm, my body feels relaxed, you're not all bunched up and tense, that's going to be a real indicator that you're ready. When you go into it, you got to be mindful of your body language. So be open and attentive. Be certain, this is what those people help you learn, right? Be certain that you are not sharing this emotional stuff with the idea that your partner can regulate you, or you're not trying to just offload onto them.
Yeah.
So, in doing that, you have to choose a thoughtful way to express so that you're not speaking from pain or shame, which includes anger and resentment. So, that's the first part, regulate. R. E is ease into it. This is vital. Ask for your partner's consent. Is this a good time to share something? Right? They have to be able to assess their readiness, their emotional readiness. You might have to be patient while they think about it. You have to ask this to give them the respect of, maybe they're not able to handle this right now. Maybe they need to prepare for it. They might need more than a few minutes. They might need a day or so. They might not be able to talk about it right now. So it's really helpful to provide an out. Like, it's okay if now's not the time. That's helpful because we'll get a lot of partners who are like, okay, we'll just talk about it. And they're really not ready. So by saying it's okay if now's not the time, it really gives them that chance to sit back and,
Yeah.
maybe now isn't. So we're going to respect our partner's boundaries and their readiness. If they say that they can't hear it right now, respect that. A, articulate clearly and gently. It's really good here to preface that you're going to share with them, not to make you feel okay or to deny their feelings so that you feel relief or make you comfortable. It's helpful to preface it with that so that upfront they're knowing, okay, you're sharing this from a real place, get it real, from a real place, not
Hmm.
a place of neediness or I'm going to unburden on you and so on. Really important to be patient, stay regulated, and non-demanding. So a way that you say non-demanding is to use I statements. I feel blank when blank, not when you do this. That's a demanding kind of statement. Puts somebody
Yeah.
back on their heels. It doesn't respect their emotional fragility or where they are with things. So we need to use I statements. We can own our own emotions without blaming. This is how I feel, not this is how you make me feel. Clarify any misunderstandings gently and patiently. So if you see your partner kind of going, what? What did you say? What I mean is, by that, I mean this, but very patiently. Be patient with the fact that they may react emotionally out of a misunderstanding. Very helpful is owning anything that you've done that's part of whatever situation you're discussing. And be specific, don't generalize. Own your stuff specifically. So yeah, I'm sorry about all of that stuff I did. Not not helpful.
Yeah. Nope.
Get specific with it. And then take responsibility for those pieces. This is what I can do, and this is what I'm going to do, and then make sure you follow through. So this sounds a little bit like an amends here. But what I'm saying is that you can use that part of the amends process in conversation, in communication, because you're really wanting to ensure that your partner is not hearing it as blame or you've got to handle this. They're hearing you taking responsibility with it as well. L is listen with acceptance and humility. So you're listening to understand, not to defend. Don't interrupt your partner while they're talking or prepare your rebuttal. You've really got to be actively listening. If you're listening, you're thinking of, ooh, I might have a question there. And so you can then ask clarifying questions. so that you're seeking deeper understanding of what they're saying. Reflect back what you've heard, paraphrase it, validate it. I just want to be sure that I understand what you said. This is what I heard. Tell me if I'm wrong or if there's anything I missed there. So you're asking if you heard them right. That includes them in the conversation. You hear how non-blaming that is? It's so much better.
It's a good tool to think about reflect, don't return. So you might hear your partner say something. So instead of returning jab for jab, oh, right, here you go, I'm coming back at you. It's being able to say, so wait a minute, let me reflect. So what I hear is this, or I don't know if I'm hearing this right. Maybe it's my own transference. I'm transferring onto you my own junk, but help me understand this because if we can avoid these major pitfalls that you're going to talk about in a minute, quite honestly, this could be a stairway to really good, substantial progress for couples who are trying to heal. As we're almost done here, what are some of the major pitfalls to really try and avoid?
So another repeat one. Don't dump. This is not you dumping your emotions on your partner. I'm going to reemphasize they cannot be your emotional regulator. You don't really want them to ever be your emotional regulator. You want to grow into co regulation. That's not right now if you're early on. Don't perform. Saying what you think they want to hear is manipulation, flat out. Don't demand. Expressing what's going on for you emotionally is an invitation for discussion, not an ultimatum. Don't disappear. Silence can be and certainly will feel like to them just another form of control. It leaves a partner on their heels wondering what's going on. It repeats the betrayal trauma because it's passive aggressive, which is a form of emotional violence and totally undermines trust again. So, those are the four pitfalls that we can really fall into.
And really, today's such a scalpel into the heart of the unfaithful. I know that you'll echo this statement. When we own our own part and we're willing to do our own work, it's not that we become unstoppable, but we become a safe place to actually start to do work because we're not constantly defensive. We're not constantly blaming somebody else. We're not like this nuclear reactor where the slightest bit of negative feedback or something goes wrong and we're just off to the races. So, you unfaithful, I really hope that you will take the real method, memorize it, put it down on paper, write notes about it. I hope that you betrayed on behalf of James and I really feel seen today because we understand through our own work and through our own progress that so often, this is a clinical term I learned, we can be complete jerk faces and really continue to just harm you by our own reactivity because we understand from feedback, hours and hours and years of our own work coming to moments where we say, gosh, what a jerk I was, or what a jerk I was being. But it takes safety to come to that point. It takes work for us to be able to even hit that point of humility. So, James and I hope that every single one of you will come to that point of humility where you can say to your betrayed, let me use this tool. Let me use that tool. Let's go watch a podcast together. Let's show some intentionality. You said it today. Let me show some relational leadership here.
Yeah.
And so, James, more and more, you guys are doing intensives. You're doing wonderful work with so many people. And so we get a lot of people emailing. And so, just to help with those people that are like, how do I do an intensive? What does that look like? How do they do an evaluation on if one of your intensives is right for them and their situation?
I think probably the best way is to email us and book a consultation. Gail, our office manager, can give you a lot of feedback, and that will help you decide, do I want to go ahead and have a consultation? It's absolutely not just, are you a good fit for us? It's really, are we a good fit for you? And if
Yeah.
we're not, we're going to help guide you to the best type of help you can get that suits you. And Sam, how do they get in touch with you?
For those of you that want to reach out, you can reach out to me at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com or just send the email that y'all send to asktheunfaithful@gmail.com. I think you said it wonderfully. We may not be a good fit, but we might know someone that is, or we might be able to just point you in the right direction. As always, we're incredibly grateful that you tuned in today. Don't forget about Ask the Betrayed, which you can find on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. Don't forget about my podcast. You can find them on all the same platforms. We're grateful for each and every one of you. And if we can help in any way, don't be afraid to reach out to asktheunfaithful@gmail.com. We'll see you next time on Ask the Unfaithful.